Everyone, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for June 30th. If you'll please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if we can just please remain standing for a moment of silence. We have two folks that we would like to recognize from the community who recently passed away, one of which is John Murphy, and the other is Sal Malanguacha. Thank you. So before we get started, I just want to send our sincerest condolences to the Murphy family on behalf of the entire town council. So those of us who knew John, we affectionately called him IT John. And that was because back then we had like 3 John M's, right? We had John Malero, John Mayer, and then John Murphy would come, and we were developing an app, and it was just totally confusing. And John M didn't even work. So we affectionately started calling him IT John. And he was instrumental in helping us shepherd in new technology. He developed municipal apps at our request. He produced my community TV segment, which we called the Mayor Spotlight. And he even came up with some cool music in the beginning to make it all professional looking and sounding, so I could communicate with the public, especially during the height of the pandemic as we navigated that. He was incredibly proud of his position, and he always gave 110%. And he was always there when the council called on him for his expertise. So we will miss him dearly, and he will forever be in our hearts. Okay. So now we'll move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public, who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comments via email should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting to have their public comment read into the record. And I don't see anybody. Do you have anybody, Joanne?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to appointments and resignations.
None on this side. None on this side as well.
All right, approval of the minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the budget workshop dated April 29th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay,
I approve too.
thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the council meeting of May 5th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstention here.
Okay, and John was an aye.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the council meeting of June 2nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay, and 1 aye from John.
And the last one, make a motion to approve the special meeting of June 12th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any,
Aye.
any abstentions? Okay, great. Moving on to subcommittee reports, beginning with finance.
The Finance Committee met on Thursday, June 12th. I'll just give a brief update from that meeting. One of the items on tonight's new business agenda is the approval of the awarded bid for Washington Street sidewalks to Weber Nursery from New Britain for $111,680. They were $5,700 below the next bidder. This company has performed work as a subcontractor for the town, so the town was confident in their ability to perform the project. On the good news side, under our state aid for municipalities, we were previously reported that the municipal revenue sharing grant, or grants and aid, of $222,000 would not be coming, and surprise, the state sent us the money. So we'll gladly accept that, so we'll take some good news into the budget and help Mona close out the fiscal year,
Exactly.
which is going to be tight. The other one is within the undesignated fund, and Mona, correct me if I'm wrong, we had about $178,000 in there that's undesignated. So if we have a particular project that comes up during the next fiscal year, we have $178,000 available should we want to allocate those funds. We reviewed our monthly financial report. Most of our revenue and expenses are in line with prior meetings. We, continue to have our overages in certain areas, but are optimistic we'll close the year in an okay position, thanks to some cuts that were done previously to get us where we need to be. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 10th.
Thank you. Government operations.
Government operations, the meeting for June was canceled. I believe our next meeting is July 21st.
Public safety.
Yeah, Public Safety met on June 16th at 5:30, and can we put the PowerPoint up, please? I have a short report tonight going through the PowerPoint. Let's start with the PD. The headline there is really that we finally have all sworn positions filled at this point. That's really something we really care about for obviously for public safety reasons, but also from workload perspective of all the police officers that work day and night. I think it's an important metric, and at this point in time, we are fully filled on those open positions, which is great news. The other news in recruiting is active selection process for the SRO is ongoing, and we should be hearing more later in summer, probably, hopefully, if not fall. So those are the two big headline items out there. Moving on to fire. Next slide, please. So fire, in terms of the numbers, they had 66 incidents and 9 I-91 responses. If you look at the data from past year over year, pretty much tracks with that. So nothing extraordinary going on there. On the fire side, everything seems to be in line from a numbers perspective. Moving on to the next slide. So Aetna had their 80th birthday. That was like the big happy birthday for them. And they welcomed like 6 new EMTs to the team. And from a numbers perspective, the ambulance numbers seem to be pretty much track year over year. That's been the case for most of the last year. They are making though some changes. So moving on to the next slide, actually, from a RH volunteer ambulance perspective, the numbers seem to be also tracking. But the big news there, which is not on the slide really, is that they're working on software update, if you will. It's bigger than the software update. It's a full platform, I think. They are replacing and bringing in like some data synergies. They are working with Aetna and like how they process incidents and like how they process flow of information between the two, and also dispatching and things like that. So I think that at some point we are going to have an update on that, probably from the town manager, or maybe we can do it in the public safety first and then probably have them come to the town council. But I think it's a big one. It's kind of like understated, that whole platform and software update. So that's the report. Thank you.
Senior liaison.
I'm sorry, Senior Liaison meets quarterly. Next meeting is July 28th, 5 p.m.
Land acquisition and farmland preservation.
We had a meeting last week, working with the town. We identified a new area at Town Farm to have community gardens for this upcoming year and growing season. So Dave Plumberg is now developing the plots in the area that we chose, and hopefully we'll be moving full steam ahead this winter and getting everything ready for next spring. That's a report.
Liaison to the state rep and state senator.
Seeing as this was a special meeting, I didn't receive any info from either one. Thanks.
School liaison.
No report.
Capital Improvements Committee.
I do not have a report.
and Economics Development Subcommittee.
There was no meeting scheduled, so no report.
There's nothing on the consent agenda nor old business. Moving on to new business A, discussion, possible action, award of bid, Washington Street sidewalk.
Gee,
You want me to do
Good.
it?
No, give me a second, got to get the right page. So this was what I mentioned in the Finance Committee report. We have I'll make a motion to approve the award of bid for the Washington Street sidewalk construction. Be it resolved that the town of Rocky Hill, that the Rocky Hill Town Council awards the bid for the Washington Street sidewalk construction project to Weber Nursery of New Britain, Connecticut, at a bid price of $111,650, $680.50. This service will be charged to the Capital Non-Reoccurring Infrastructure Reserve, budget line 40950-005793.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I had a question or two. That line item that the money's coming from, where's that figure, where's the money coming out of?
It is budgeted in your, well, I say year, I got my years, I can't keep track, I just went through an audit, so I can't remember what year I'm in. The 24-25 year general fund budget, but because we're approving this, it'll be transferred to non-reoccurring and expend that way. So it's already budgeted for in the current year. We'll transfer it into non-reoccurring, so we can do the purchase order tomorrow, which will be the new year for 25-26.
We weren't able to find any grant money for that? To fund it?
No, no,
Okay.
no, not for that one.
Some people in the area, can we send out a mailer when it's going to start? Some of the families have reached out to me, and they haven't heard much what's going on, and, so they could just prepare the front of their properties, if that's something possible to do.
I would say maybe on a side note, we're doing the bid on the second for the Century Hills sidewalk project as well, which is grant funded.
Oh, good. Do you know how many feet that sidewalk on Washington Street is? How many?
I don't.
I did last week, Fran.
Okay, just let me know later. Yeah, thanks. That's all I have, thank you.
Steve went through that whole.
Yeah, I would just second the thought here about the communication piece. I think for these bigger items, I think it will be good to proactively communicate out there and just make sure like everybody knows what's going on. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Hi.
All right, B, discussion, possible action, shared services study. So we received subsequent to our packets, a services study that looks sort of in-house at services that was prepared by CROG, I believe, in 2013. And there has been discussion amongst the caucuses and during the budget process about us looking both externally and internally as to how we may share services to save money moving forward. So CROG actually has a shared services subcommittee, which Mona and Ray have been attending for quite some time now. And they already have their own ideas. And so thank you for sharing that document. Most recently in those meetings, we have been talking about the value of sort of mapping out what services are most instrumental to conducting business on a daily basis, and which of those services we might be able to collaborate with other towns to deliver more efficiently and less expensively. So CROG is going to see about a possible study. It's going to talk to full membership and see if they want to spend money on doing a shared services roadmap. And then that, obviously CROG is, all of Greater Hartford, but then breaking that down into smaller chunks. So we may be looking at a study that shares services with perhaps Newington and Weathersfield, maybe Berlin. That's sort of our central health district group. So that's sort of in the works. And in the interim, we had also very briefly during the budget process, I discussed it would be nice if we can sort of look internally and see if there are ways that we may be able to increase efficiencies, perhaps working with the Board of Ed. I know there have been years where the town and Board of Ed worked together with certain things, and I don't know which departments were together, and then, it was better that they were apart and not merged. And I think some of that has to do with the students and privacy information and all of that. I think there was some IT at one point, some collaboration. I think now we have different HR departments, right? And so there's a need for that, obviously. But are there other ways where we might be able to work together? So I wanted to put that on the table because it had been brought up. If that's something we want to explore, do we want to bring someone in to talk about what that might look like? So I'm going to open up the floor for that discussion.
So, Madam Mayor, are we looking at these two elements separately, or one is going to lead into the other? Like, for example, is the CROG roadmap, are we looking at that roadmap as a way to inform what we want to do in terms of internal efficiency and the study, for example, like you mentioned? Do we want to do that? I don't know what the town manager thinks, or I will open it up, but that's the question in my head. Like, do we look at this as kind of two pieces of one puzzle and approach it that way? Like treating CROG as like a roadmap, but then working in parallel to get someone in to like start looking at our processes, and other things that might be of interest.
John Emmanuel's got his hand up too.
Oh, John, go ahead. John Emmanuel.
Yeah, thanks. I read through half the document and I was looking at CROG's website. So my question is for Ray. Since this document came out in 2013, do you know, based on some of the meetings and discussions, have there been, over the past 10 years, projects or collaboration between towns that have worked that we could use that as an example, and some examples that have not worked? Because it looked like, reading some of the minutes of CROG and some of those discussions, it looked like there has been some collaboration, and there's certainly interest in certain areas, certain departments collaborating between towns. Do you know offhand, has there been successes? Because, I mean, I'm in full agreement that we need to start collaborating with other towns, that we're still working in silos, not only internally between the Board of Ed and the town, but within towns that surround us, that we could certainly leverage some things and savings. But have you seen anything or heard anything from your meetings with CROG?
Yeah, the meetings with CROG are, a lot of the smaller towns are collaborating on several activities, building inspection, for example, and dispatch services and building inspections. When we get to the larger towns like Rocky Hill and Enfield and West Hartford, it gets more difficult because each, with logistics and each town has their own highway and their own equipment. There is some equipment sharing. Actually, we're in the process right now. We have a grant with several towns. We're sharing equipment for Parks and Rec. Waste management is a big one. That's a regional effort right now between many of the towns. There is an issue, that report, 2013, it is silent on union issues. The ideas are great, but once you start talking about moving jobs from one town to another, you get involved with union issues. So we need to keep that in the forefront, and how do we deal with union arbitration and mediation and potential lawsuits. So, when you start farming out union jobs to another union in a different municipality. So, that's a key right there. Internally, we have been working for a couple of years looking at operations in town, identifying where we think we could incentivize to make operations maybe more efficient. One example we did approve last year in our budget was to, was it last year?
Yeah,
Last year.
last year for this year.
Yeah, one of the years.
Yeah.
Past. We tried, and we did propose, and we tried to consolidate a position down in the assessor's office and tax office to share one position, but both departments lost an employee each. Would have been pretty efficient cost savings, but we had an issue with the union, and we didn't follow through with that. But we have been working and speaking to the Board of Ed periodically. When we were down 4 out of 4 people in our IT department, Board of Ed jumped in, helped us. And there are other avenues we can explore down that line as we move forward into this next fiscal year. But to get back to your question, CROG is going to be looking at, I think, providing a service to towns. Like, we would access a CROG contractor to look at, maybe to help us. For example, the Fair Rent Commission,
The hearing officer, yeah,
hearing officer.
yeah.
Or, for example, they're doing building inspections now for several other towns.
Right.
So you would probably it would be more like okay, I'm gonna contact CROG, I need a building inspection.
So it's more like macro kind of, in a way.
At this point, yeah, I think that's what they've been talking about. The big issue in one of the last meetings we went to was Enfield. Enfield, they have all these other towns are accessing Enfield. Okay, that's great. Enfield was willing to, okay, we'll help you, but what's in it for them, kind of thing. That's the other part of this. And I'm not saying we need to look at this. I agree, 100%. It's just being in New England, being in Connecticut, 169 governments, it's going to be very difficult to do more than just equipment sharing and maybe borrowing a couple of inspectors here and there.
Yeah, so that's why I was wondering, and this is, since you have looked at this, Ray, like internally, right? At least in parts, right? I was thinking if you start looking at this in a more systematic fashion, right? So an opportunity here, an opportunity there, like the one you mentioned, you found a barrier to that, finding that efficiency, right? But from a systemic perspective, right, we never had like a real study of all the operations, all the departments, looking systematically at existing collaborations with barriers to those collaborations, right? And what I'm suggesting is maybe we look inward first while we are looking at CROG, right? And start there, because you already have a little bit of head start there. You have already done some of that work in the past couple of years, like you were saying. So I'm just thinking, and I'll let everybody chime in, but I think that might be a great starting point, because you already have a head start there. And like maybe you can use some help in terms of like bringing like more systematic overview of those existing opportunities, which might not be visible like from a day-to-day basis, because we are all busy getting stuff done and getting, product out of the door, as they say.
My director of operations is chomping at the bit
I
here.
am, I'm
You know,
squirming.
just, we're working on new work order systems right now that she's working with a couple of different departments to get that implemented. So like, you'll appreciate this, we need data. We need to have data to back us up, to back up our actions and our, you know, what we want to do. So that's what we're doing now. And Mona, if you want to jump,
I do want to.
go ahead. I know you do. I hear you.
You do, you can feel it. So, yeah, so that's exactly, like I said, aside from finance, we have operations as well. And town manager mentioned the attempt that we had with the tax and the assessor's office and bumped up against some union situations. But I say that we as a team are wiser because of that. And I thought you were going to talk about the transfer station because we were able to make a recommendation for a reduction there. And we were more effective as a team when we met that union hurdle because we had data. We had a system we tracked, and that's one of the biggest things. So I think it's that, and I keep saying as a team, it's, you know, town manager, myself, and HR sitting in the audience here. We're constantly looking at from, you know, the HR, from the manager, from a finance, always finance, these areas where we can see that there are opportunities for reduced spending. And, I mean, clearly we have several in mind, and I think we're making the right steps to putting those, you know, work order systems, for example, so we can create the data when you make the recommendation that we're eliminating whatever XYZ, either a service or a position or the staffing levels, that we have our information and we can verify it. So I think we've got some, I hate to call them low-hanging fruit, but we've definitely got some areas that we could focus on. Not to say that someone from the outside can't offer some information, but it would probably be more of an executive session situation, but share some of the thoughts and direction that we see ourselves going in.
So, I mean, it seems to me then that we should probably have you folks continue with what you're doing for the time being. And then when you finish with that, if we need to look at some outside things, if you're already on a roll, we might as well continue with that. Makes sense to me.
Well, how long have you been attending the CROG sessions? I didn't know until tonight you were working with them anyways.
We always work with CROG, every department.
No, I
has
thought
a
it was specifically to find some
Well,
alliances and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, we've been going for the past few months to, for the Shared Services Board or Committee for CROG.
So can I raise two questions? please? So first, Ray and Mona, was there some specific event that prompted this report from 12 years ago to resurface?
I think it's because I put it on the agenda. So
What's that?
I put it on the agenda, so he was kind enough to go back.
I see.
Because when we were at the last CROG meeting and we were talking about, you know, shared services, they actually mentioned, oh, remember back in the day, we did a study, and lo and behold, he found the study. Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you. And secondly, Ray, we've identified this issue about the collective bargaining agreements as a potential obstacle to implementing these suggestions. Does CROG have any advice on how to deal with that, such as some suggested language to propose to insert into the next round of collective bargaining agreements, whereby the town, reserves the discretion to implement this kind of thing?
We will be talking about that at the next meeting. That's a question I have for the Executive Director, Matt Hart. But I have done research. I have starting a file on other collective bargaining agreements, intermunicipal agreements. So, whether they're from Connecticut or from Idaho, we can still utilize those. But it'd be ultimately we send it out to the town attorney. And if CROG does have reference material like that, we will absolutely utilize it.
And that strikes me as the sort of thing that CROG should be doing, because it seems like it's a consistent issue from
Our
town to town. There's no point having every town hire their own town attorney to come up with language.
Well, CROG did say that they have someone who does that, yeah.
Understood, okay. So, thank you.
I got a couple of pieces, if you don't mind. So during the budget workshop, this is one of the comments I made, that if we don't start looking at things differently, we're just going to continue each year with budget increases, and this is that opportunity to make changes. And respectfully, Dana, or Mona, what you're doing in-house is great, but I think sometimes we're too close to the action, and we need to bring in outside people to take a look at where we're going, that strictly their focus is on this topic. You know, I didn't have time to read the whole report that you sent over, but I cheated and ran it through AI and asked for a summary, and I did get one. But the key is that a lot of the things they're recommending, in 2013, HRIS systems were just coming into their infancy. 12 years later, we're in a completely different space. Same with ERP systems, right? Nobody had one, everybody did their own accounting system, and now it's the norm. So I think the report is outdated, and some of the recommendations aren't gonna help us move to the next step. But I think we need to look outside of the town organization, someone with a fresh set of eyes that does this professionally. But the key to that is we need the Board of Education to be willing to cooperate with us, because we don't have the authority to say, Board of Ed, we want to look at your stuff. They have to come to us and say, hey, we're willing to collaborate and take a joint look. Otherwise, we're really just going to spin our wheels. And it's not going to make a lot of sense unless we look at things holistically as an entire town. So, you know, we need to talk to the Board of Education, make sure they're on board, and then, you know, I don't want to jump the gun, but the next step is to kind of draw up an RFP and start looking for somebody who can come in and do a presentation along these type of items that does it professionally.
The only question I have, in addition to what, kind of piggybacking of what Alan said, is, have you ever looked at, I know we have had discussions about the Board of Ed and the finance director and the HR and everything else, the IT. But have we ever had like a systematic conversation around those issues, topics, or that you're aware of? I don't know, like, obviously this is before your time.
Yeah, that's
I mean, but
not in the past.
not in the
3 years,
past, right?
2 years.
I'm just looking for some kind of, like, some benchmarking somewhere if we ever, like, embarked on this. People on this council have been around before me, so I don't know. But I think that might be a good starting point, Alan. I agree with you. Board of Ed might be a good starting point for a conversation. But also, I think from a process standpoint, I think just starting out and starting to draw like some of the framework, like starting to build a framework around how we want to like approach this from a purely like an inward looking kind of a study perspective, right? To your point, Alan. And if we can start working on that at least, right? And while we have these conversations with the Board of Ed from a feasibility standpoint, I think the scoping, that's what you're like kind of alluding to, Alan, right? When you say, if we can bring in Board of Ed, that should be more powerful in terms of like where it can get us, right? That kind of a study. But from that squarely in my view is scoping, right? But from a framework standpoint, we can still start talking about this, right? What that framework looks like, right? If we were to do something like this, embark on something like this, and then maybe add scoping later, and not scoping be like kind of a roadblock, right? The scoping meaning, hey, are we looking at just, I will give you an example. Do we want to look at public safety, public works, highway, like, yeah, here are your like 4 departments, right? I'm just making it up. I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just saying from the scope of work perspective, that's almost like a trivial question to me, like the scoping piece of it, what comes under the umbrella of such a study. But I think the parameters of the study, what are we looking for? What is the goal of a study like this, right? What are the outcomes that we are looking for, right? What are the action that we are trying to drive? Those are the more important questions to me in terms of like scoping something like not scoping, building a framework around something like this, and then bringing in the scoping later. Because if we get into the scoping conversation too early in this process, what will happen is it becomes its own impediment, if you will. And I want to avoid that scenario where we are spinning our wheels in the scoping conversation, and it becomes like a really difficult conversation across like several stakeholders, right? So in my view, my suggestion is let's go with the framework first, figure out the goals, outcomes, path to get there, right? A feasible path, and then talk about scoping.
I like that. I'm picking up a couple things here. One, I support CROG. CROG coming in, maybe give us a presentation, see what they can offer, what they recommend for shared services. I'm also picking up maybe an independent firm or company coming in and looking at our town departments in a different light. I kind of agree. I think maybe you guys doing a great job. That was an awesome idea to combine one job out of two departments. Didn't work, but thank you for trying that and thinking outside the box to do that. But I also think maybe another firm that's professionally does this may see things that we're not seeing and could give us an idea. And I would ask us to pursue CROG, have a presentation on that. And I would ask our operational manager to possibly see if there's an independent firm that could give us a talk on something of a nature of an independent company coming in and looking at our departments.
Yeah, we'll
Another
see who's out there.
presentation.
Yeah, we'll see who's out there.
Does
you know-
CROG have a list of approved vendors, so to speak, that where we would have to go through an RFP process if they've got someone that they already use that, could fill that role?
Let's ask.
We'll ask, just got to make sure if others are happy with that particular consultant, sure, yeah. Do you happen to know how much money each town would have to pay for CROG, for the shared services? Do we know?
Well, it hasn't, it's still sitting within the subcommittee. And so after the summer, then we'll bring it to the full committee, and then the full committee will decide, does it want to move forward? I don't know what their budget is, if the full committee agrees to spend the money. I don't know what that full budget is, but I don't think it would be a cost to the towns. I think that there's funding for them to start this mapping. But if we were to look internally, then that would be a separate cost for each municipality to do that on their own.
Okay.
I think they said too, in some of the, because I did read through this, that it depends on how many, when they do the pilot, so to speak, how many participate will make a difference in what their costs and everything too, if I read it correctly. I read it quickly, but I did read it.
Yeah,
So it's kind of up in the air at this point, I guess.
yeah.
Can I just follow up on one piece? Ray, when Jeff asked about the vendor list,
Yeah.
isn't it that any municipality could piggyback anything that's on the state contract?
Correct.
So you wouldn't need the CROG vendor list. We could actually use anything on the state contract without going out to bid, as long as we're using their low bidder?
Yeah.
So that's kind of already in existence without CROG, is I guess what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of finding a vendor, you're saying?
Well, you could take, my understanding of it is if we wanted a vendor for XYZ and the state had already gone out to bid, we could utilize that vendor at the state rate. We don't have to rebid the project.
Right.
We would get the same rate that the state got. So we don't have to do the RFP
Correct.
process.
So that speeds up the
If
process.
said vendor agrees to meet that.
Correct.
Yeah, so, but also I think CROG just gives you another pool. So if the state didn't have someone that did what we wanted and CROG was closer to it, then you can look at both sources.
Sure.
And
And I think-
piggyback a CROG too.
Yeah, and I think they are two very separate and distinct analyses. And I'm not sure that we want to merge them. I think there's one, are we going to look at, and I don't want to say regionalized, but a collaborative municipal approach, right? And then do we want to look at collaborations internally? And so I think they need to be kept separate.
So what are our next steps? I mean, we have discussion and possible action, but I don't know, we have an action item to take away from this, except,
Yeah, I suggest like while we are talking about like possible actions, I don't think we are at the stage, like you said, Alan, like where we are like looking for an RFP yet, but maybe having a framework presentation, some kind of a knowledge gathering and sharing, short of like the scoping conversation in a formal way. And that scoping the conversation with the Board of Ed, let's just be clear what I mean by scoping. If you're talking to Board of Ed and want it beyond the town hall, right, across the town, then I think that conversation can go in parallel. But from an action item perspective, I think maybe we try to put a presentation together, maybe bring somebody in who can speak with some authority on this issue. I did do some searching on ChatGPT. It's there, why not use it, right? So there are towns in Connecticut who have done this before from a inward-looking analysis perspective, right? Some of them have looked at like different, and so those things are out there. So I'm not suggesting we follow one path or the other of a particular town, but clearly these things exist in Connecticut and outside of Connecticut as well. If we start like looking into research, right? If we start researching this. So I think what I will suggest is maybe the town manager start looking at like some of those examples out there, and then bring to us a presentation and information sharing or a path forward, I guess.
I'll work on deciphering what you just said. We'll have it. We'll have it.
No, I agree. I think we need more information gathering before we can take any formal action. So I guess if that's an action item, to give us more information, I think that's.
Yeah, and I would suggest like a formal presentation of some sort, like from somebody who can speak to this intelligently and with authority, right?
But first comes collaboration from the Board of Education.
Yes.
Because I do agree,
How do you-
absent
how do you
that
vote?
collaboration, that this is pointless.
All of that has to happen first.
Well, we'll have a discussion with Mark Zito.
No pressure.
Yeah, and I think don't let that temper your spirit, Ray. Right? Like I think I would march on with like what you think is the right way to approach this, and put together that framework, and bring in the guest speaker / expert, like SME, whatever, right? And not worry too much about like where we can get bogged down. Maybe we'll get bogged down, right? But maybe, to Alan's point, maybe we'll get somewhere eventually with this, with a much more bolder strategy. I don't know. We'll see.
Is this going to cost us money to have someone come in?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not initially, not if they think they could
They
possibly
make it a
get.
contract?
More of a proposal,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
I mean, then I would agree to that scenario. If it's not going to cost us money and you cannot get a clear, definitive answer from Board of Ed, then maybe they need to see some type of, and maybe we invite them to the presentation,
Well,
right?
I like that idea a lot. Let's invite them to the presentation.
but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. We've made the assumption that combining the town and the Board of Ed makes sense.
Oh, no, not necessarily.
Well, we said the first step is talk to the Board of Ed. Our consultant may come in and said, keep them separate.
Right,
So
right.
we got to be open to all of it. So definitely got to bring someone in that's an expert, not us.
We
You
agree.
know,
We agreed on that. I think we completely agree on that. That's why I said like that scoping conversation should come later. Yeah, but agreed, 100%.
It wouldn't hurt to have both of us hear the conversation and what they could do, because maybe there's not a collaboration effort, but maybe there's an internal desire
On
on
both
them
sides.
parts, right?
I would
So,
agree with, yeah, I agree.
But I think this, again, it's two different issues. The CROG part,
And CROG is going to be a while, so,
okay,
you
so
know.
we could put that on hold a little bit, you're thinking?
Because I don't think they're going to meet much over the summer.
Okay. So maybe we'll pursue this other way of looking at our town.
Well, I think the non-CROG is going to be better for internal.
Right, yeah, the CROG, I think, is towns working together.
Collaborations,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. It's two different issues.
Well, unless they have the expertise to give some suggestions on that collaboration between municipal
Well, I
and
think we
and
should
Board of
look
Ed as
into
well.
that. When searching out for proposals or whatever, CROG might be the place to start and then go beyond it.
And this may very well help them as, too, right? Because when we reconvene, whenever that is, we may have something to bring them as a model and say, hey, let's expand on this regionally.
Yeah.
All right, so we're good? All right, we're going to table this?
Yeah, for item C, I'll make a motion to table.
Second?
Item B?
B, shared services.
No, C.
C.
Oh,
See?
I thought you were tabling.
B
I
is
just did.
tabled.
C.
Okay. Okay.
Item C, Connecticut age.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant B. I thought we had a table B. My apologies.
Oh,
We're just not taking any action, that's all.
We're not
No, I
taking-
know,
Gotcha.
but when we don't take an action, there's no tabling. It'll just show up again.
I will remove my motion.
Sorry. All right. And then C, you tabled, and now executive session?
No, you, all right.
Now he's got to redo it.
Do you want me to table C?
I do want you to table C.
Okay, so now I'll make a motion to table the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative.
And I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on to executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-202, with the town manager, director of human resources and legal compliance, and director of finance and operations regarding strategy and negotiations with respect to collective bargaining, RE Municipal Employees Union, Independent Local 506, and to discuss records, reports, and statements of collection, bargaining strategy and negotiations pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-210B9.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask you
Make a motion to come out of executive session?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on to the mayor's report. So June was super, super busy with a lot of notable things happening, so I just want to give a shout out to everyone who was involved in a whole bunch of community events. We took a big step in the expansion of our agritourism and the first use of our community farm with the opening of a Pick Your Own Strawberry experience, which gave visitors and families this really amazing opportunity to engage directly with farming. And so we want to thank the Collins family for bringing that experience, and we look forward to the expansion of that program, perhaps in the fall, but certainly next year. We celebrated the graduation of our preschoolers and our high school seniors, so congratulations to everyone. We're super proud of you. We unveiled and dedicated a very special Blue Star Mom Memorial marker on the corner of Elm and Main, which honors past, present, and future armed services personnel. We want to thank the Blue Star Memorial, the Blue Star Moms, and a woman by the name of Joanne Sullivan, who is president of the Weathersfield Federated Garden Club, because without a federated garden club, which Rocky Hill is not, and many garden clubs are not, you cannot move forward with these particular markers. So it was a lot of levels of approval that we had to go through, which basically took about a year. And I want to thank everyone who came out and supported our pancake breakfast, and of course to Walt and the Parks crew for the beautification efforts. If you don't know, Governor Lamont vetoed House Bill 5002, so that's good news for our community, and we can move forward perhaps with some recommendations with respect to what we'd like to see in that bill. The weather was beautiful for our Juneteenth celebration. We were blessed to have many talented artists join us, and many thanks to everyone who came out and made it a fun and memorable celebration. Rocky Hill has launched a restaurant trail, which is another exciting effort that Alondra and in our Economic and Business Development Management Department is leading in defining tourism for Rocky Hill and drawing folks to town to support our local businesses. So I want to give her a big shout out for that. And then also because she ran an inaugural event called Make Music Day in Rocky Hill, which was celebrated on the 21st across our community. And to our Rocky Hill Human Youth and Senior Services for their highly successful production of Murder for Dummies. So I applaud all of them for bringing that vision to life, and the community that they have empowered through local theater. Connecticut DOT is making several significant improvements along the Silestine corridor, one of which is to improve safety and accessibility from Marshall Road to Town Line Road. It's a $5.5 million project, which is federal and state money, and anticipates shovels in the ground in 2027 and were completed sometime in 2028. It will include the elimination of those high-speed slip ramps at exit 24, which will be replaced with a signal traffic lane. They will be adding crosswalks and sidewalks and adding lighting and much to raise the light under the bridge as well. This initiative, actually, when you combine it with the Weathersfield Safety Improvements Project that we are doing with the IIJA money, and our recent partnership with the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority is moving us closer to realizing this vision of a walkable, vibrant, village-type district that is outlined in our POCD, which is bringing people, businesses, and community together. So, as you know, part of that long-term planning began with the elimination of the blighted property at the former Ames corporate headquarters, that subsequent building of the mixed-use project, which now is the anchor for creating that downtown. And from there, these new projects, the goal is to enable us to attract new businesses, to enhance the corridor aesthetics. And there is an old study, I don't remember from what year it is,
2005.
2005, with the most beautiful artwork on the bridge. And you may remember there was circular traffic circle and some other things, which we don't need the traffic circle, but there are some really cool things there. And also to explore infill development, which is important, and to strengthen our community identity all the way to the river. And then finally, Field Day Fun in Elmridge Park is throughout the month of July. It'll be every Wednesday from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Lots of family fun with music, mindfulness, fun activities, food prep, and charcuterie board making. So I encourage everyone, you do not have to register for that kind of stuff. You can show up and have fun with your family. And that concludes my mayor's report.
Town manager's report. Just two things
Gotcha.
on the two-page. You all have that. My report will be online on the town's website also. The Rocky Hill Business Park, which Phase 2, which is commonly referred to as a pit. It really, to me, is Rocky Hill Business Park Phase 2, because that's what the property was bought for way back when. Second part of the industrial park. We are closing the pit to the public starting tomorrow. Excuse me. We did a video this morning and last Friday. It will go live tomorrow. Another town manager straight from the top informational video on closing the pit to the public. We posted a sign. Basically, all it requires is, instead of going to the pit, getting your materials or dropping off brush, you go to the transfer station. Transfer station is being reorganized slightly now to accommodate the extra brush and what have you. And we're working on a Phase 2, which I apologize for the allergies. Phase 2 is a longer-term plan where we'll be looking at circulation and improving the circulation around that whole property. Second bullet point is bulky waste. We began in May 16th, 2025, with a new procedure, scheduling the bulky waste. There's now a dedicated phone line for residents to call in to request that curbside bulky waste pickup. The new number, just for everyone, is 860-338-9612. And the new email address is transferstation@rockyhillct.gov. You can also text your messages too and schedule a pickup. Just want to remind everyone that bulky waste requirements are posted on the website. They're specific as to what materials can be put outside for bulky waste pickup. It does not include household trash and other miscellaneous items like cleaning out a closet and throwing it on the front lawn, which we've had over the past year or so. We'll be enforcing that. I think that will do it. You can read the rest.
Can I ask you a question about the pit?
Yeah.
What was the thought process about not allowing the public to drop off material down there?
I think the public were, initially the public was allowed to go down there during COVID, and it continued. It's a level A aquifer. It provides drinking water to Glastonbury and Cromwell. And we have been in the process of trying to market that property for development, industrial, commercial development. We have a $500,000 grant to design a new bridge or culvert just to do that, to try to make it more, to try to incentivize a developer to maybe look at it. That's $500,000 they don't have to spend in the design. The idea was to even get that pre-approved for wetlands. So that's a cost a developer would not have to incur if they're interested. In the past, I had put out several, probably 5 RFPs on that property for interested parties. We once had a 9-lot industrial subdivision interest in that. Steve laid out a subdivision. We had an interest for an indoor recreation facility, about 80,000 square feet. That none of these worked out because of the issue. Primary issue was the culvert crossing. And that really is not a site for storage of a lot of materials that we have there.
What's the plan then?
Plan
with the
is to
material?
eventually, well, about a month ago, we cleaned out all of the catch basins that were there, the old catch basins we pulled out for paving, pile them up there. That's gone. There's some significant fill material that was put there. You know, if you go in there, you know, there's some elevation differences that should not be there. You know, that whole area was a flat sand pit.
But with the, you're saying the brush and stuff,
The brush will go to the transfer station.
but where does it go from there?
From there, we'll go back to that pit for chipping. You know, Public Works will be utilizing that property, similar to the way they use it now, but we're trying to kind of reorganize it to make it, you know, less spread out, bring it more
But
concentrated.
wouldn't it be more cost effective what's going on? The people bring it there instead of our public works now loading it, taking it down there.
Can I talk on financing?
You know, but the public really shouldn't be accessing that site for a bulky waste site. It's not licensed for that.
Is there plans to keep portion of that for that property down there for our town highway guys, what they store there now? There's the,
Yeah, there's about 40 acres remaining. The solar farm takes up about 15 to 17 acres. Totally, it's 62. So they take about 15, so the remainder is still available. So that I envision that being a shared property, you know, public highway also with private development.
would we
We'll be work-
retain part of it though?
Pardon me?
Would we retain part of the acreage
Yeah.
for the town?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be my plan anyway, you know, the dual use.
Right. I just don't, I think we use that for a lot of storage and brush and leaves and
Yeah.
all that stuff. If we
That'll-
lose that
That'll
area,
remain, Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Thank you.
And then Ray, just with respect to that 500,000, since you brought it up, can you just give us an update of where that stands procedurally? Like,
See, that was a state grant Representative Wood secured for us, I think, 2 years ago. With the process, the state process, it's in design. Design is being reviewed now by DOT. They had some tweaks they wanted to perform, and it's being held up right now at DEEP because they're concerned about fish migration. So between DOT and DEEP, we really can't predict the timeline right now.
Do we have an expiration?
We do have an expiration, but they've been very lenient on
Extensions.
extending because, you know, they see a reason for what we're doing.
okay, great, thank you. Anyone else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.
Aye.